There has been quite a few number of characters that have been doom posted over the past few months, and Brant suffered the most in the hands of a Reddit user who didn't even bother to read his kit description in the gallery before his release in version 2.1. But this man absolutely crushed all those allegations and still remains the most versatile unit in the game so far because he quite literally does everything, ranging from decent damage output, healing, shielding, and buffing other teammates with his outro skill. Since we're getting his second rerun in Phase 2 of version 2.5, we'll be breaking down Brant's pull value by reviewing the pros and cons of many factors such as ease of playstyle, damage potential, AoE for doing damage, team building options, and finally his build to help you make good informed decisions if you're planning on pulling for him for the first time or planning on getting some of his sequences to make him stay relevant in the meta as far as clearing endgame content is concerned. Let's get right into his ease of playstyle. He can self-sustain himself as a solo carry playstyle because his kit is designed in such a way that he does not depend heavily on stuff like intro skills from other characters to fill his forte stacks, since his liberation buffs the amount that he can recover within a very short amount of time. Since his attacks are mostly executed in midair, he can easily avoid damage that are telegraphed to hit the ground, and his team-wide shielding and healing capabilities increases the chances of survival in difficult endgame modes like holograms, where enemies can literally one-shot you to the afterlife. However, his playstyle requires you to be a bit proficient at dodging in midair to use him more effectively, but it's not that difficult even for casuals, since his dodge attempts always reset after heavy attack stage 1, stage 2, basic attack stage 1, stage 2, and finally stage 3 in midair. So as long as you don't panic and try to land a heavy attack or basic attack, you can always dodge after his flip shot animation right here. That counts as a follow-up after each of the heavy attack and basic attack stages that I mentioned earlier. You might also encounter some issues with his forte circuit where he drops an anchor on the enemy. This is where majority of his personal damage comes from, but at S0, you can easily get interrupted by aggressive enemies when the animation begins. S1 fixes this issue since it freezes enemies, but there are ways to get around it even at S0. The first method is to just wait until you have a good opening to use his forte skill, and this requires you to know the enemy's attack patterns. The second method is only recommended if you're proficient with quick swapping. You simply have to swap out as soon as the forte skill animation begins. His kit is designed in such a way that you gain the 20 concerto energy when the forte skill animation starts, and you gain an additional amount which fully fills his concerto energy when the anchor hits the enemy. For those running Overture, you get additional concerto energy when you use his forte skill, so you can easily get full concerto energy when the forte skill animation begins, where you can swap out to another character to trigger an intro skill before the anchor lands on the enemy. But do keep in mind that if you have a signature weapon, just starting the animation will give you the 20 concerto energy, but may not fully regenerate his concerto energy because you don't get any additional concerto energy from his weapon like Overture. Since the second method can easily make you lose outro skills and not suitable for those who are not comfortable with quick swapping, I recommend the first method, which is more casual friendly, where you use his forte skill only when you see an opening by getting familiar with enemy attack patterns. Damage potential. Brant's ability to buff his attack upon casting his liberation is what contributes to his high damage output at S0, and you can gain up to 2600 attack if you have 280% energy regen. At S0, without his signature weapon, my highest forte skill damage in the middle tower as a solo DPS with Sanwa is around 200k damage when he could take full advantage of the tower buffs during his debut in version 2.1. Which is absolutely insane because Overture's passive does not do much in terms of damage output, but in the recent tower reset where you could only benefit from the 10% fusion resistance shred in the middle tower, his forte skill was hitting around 235k damage at S0 R1 with Sanwa when his liberation buff was active. Now, while 235k damage per rotation from his forte skill is decent, for a character that also provides healing and shielding, it's not enough for him to keep up with endgame content as the game progresses if you plan to play him as a solo DPS with Sound War. So if you fall into that category, I recommend getting at least S1 so that all his damage sources, including the forte skill, can benefit from the 60% damage scaling increase. But if you usually play him in a double or triple DPS team comp like the premium monofusion team composition, he's fine at S0 even without his signature weapon. Damage area of effect. Brant's forte skill does damage in a large AoE, which can do damage to multiple enemies at once, but the issue here is that it's not consistent. What I mean by consistency is that it takes quite some time to do damage with his forte skill, unlike Chun-Li, who can do damage multiple times with her forte circuit and liberation in a large area of effect. So whimpering waste can be a bit of a problem if you're running Brant as a solo DPS. But this can easily be fixed by simply pairing him with another character like Chun-Li, who benefits from all his ultra skill buffing capabilities, or any other DPS that benefits from his ultra skill, like Jinxie for example, since she also lacks damage consistency in a large area of effect over a short period of time. So this means that you can get creative with your team building even if the DPS characters that you have on your account does not do consistent AoE damage like Jian and Zhang Liao. Team building options. Brant's team building options are looking pretty good because he has synergy with a lot of units in the game. You can play solo DPS with Sound War, double DPS with Showkeeper or Verena, Brant and Chun-Li, double DPS with Showkeeper or Verena, Brant and Lupa, double DPS with Baija, Brant and Jinxie if you don't have Cantarella or Zheji on your account, and finally triple DPS with Brant, Chun-Li and Lupa. So basically everyone can make use of Brant if you decide to pull for him regardless of the type of account that you have, since Sound War is an easily accessible character in the game. Build options. This is where Brant's disadvantages or cons become more noticeable. Brant is only heavily reliant on his signature weapon if you decide to play him as a solo DPS, but if you plan on running him with other DPS or hybrid units like Chun-Li and Lupa, Overture will do just fine as a 4-star option, and it makes it easier to reach the 250% energy regen requirement on the Tide-Breaking Courage set, which is his best in slot Echo Sonata effect. But if you don't have that, Red Spring or Emerald of Genesis will do just fine. However, building energy regen will be quite difficult, so if you plan to use Emerald of Genesis or Red Spring, you can use Molten Rift with double energy regen as a placeholder until you get access to Overture or his signature weapon, which makes it easy to use Tide-Breaking Courage with double energy regen and cracked substats with energy regen, crit rate and crit damage. So per everything I've reviewed so far, it's quite obvious that Brant's biggest issue is his build, mainly in terms of weapon options, which should have a high energy regen substat and energy regen echo substat, because his best in slot Echo Sonata effect requires you to get at least 250% energy regen before you can make use of the buffs that the 5-piece set provides. So you have to roll energy regen on every piece, in addition to crit rate and crit damage, which can consume a lot of resources, while you can get away with rolling only crit rate and crit damage when building other DPS units on your account. But this shouldn't take a huge toll on your in-game resources as long as you don't build multiple characters at once. So if you're planning on picking up Brant for the first time or getting his sequences, feel free to do so by keeping everything I've said so far in mind. That'll be all for my updated review on Brant. Hope this video provided value to you, and if it did, leave a like and subscribe to support the channel because it's free and you can always change your mind. Be sure to also join our Discord community if you're having any issues with the game or just want a place to chill or hang out. The link will be in the pinned comment below. Catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.